Hey everyone, welcome back to our podcast, The Real Talk, Unfiltered Conversations on Big Topic. I am Harsh,
I'm Nagraj.
and this is our second episode. In our first episode, we have deep dive into some of the internal factors for an individual to succeed in an organization, including having great mentors, building some strong teams, and working under inspiring leaders. Today, we are shifting gears into some of the external factors.
Today we'll discuss about personal branding, why it is important, how the landscape has changed, and what are the kind of challenges which holds back people in building their own personal brand.
So, Nagraj, you have spent close to 2 decades in Big Four consulting. How do you see the shift in people viewing personal brand today? Was it always important, or do you think it has become much more critical now? Why I'm asking you this? Because coming from India, our parents and our teachers always taught us that you should avoid self promotion and let your work speak for itself. And this is one of the reasons, even spending like 7 years in consulting, I have never focused on personal brand until my executive coach last year told me and pushed me to think about personal branding. What is your view about that?
That's a great question. So there are two parts to it, right? I mean, personal brand, the way I see is it's a combination of your unique skill, experiences, and values. That anyway forms your brand. But if I understand your question clearly, it's about making sure how others perceive your brand, which is a combination of these three things. See, my personal experiences, brand exist, whether it is in your personal life or in your professional life, because every individual is known for a set of traits and characteristics. Now, when I'm talking about branding, that is where I want to bring this differentiator. Let's take an example of corporate. I'm 100% sure that any individual from a business analyst to a partner will be known for a certain set of traits, which is their combination of skills, experience, as well as the values they believe in. Branding is how you project what you believe in for how people need to perceive you. The change in the landscape I see is a lot of times now, people are moving away, trying to project something else as the brand than what they are known for and what they believe in. This is the change I see. And to answer your question, personal branding is absolutely very important, whether it is a personal life or a professional life. Specifically in a professional life, your personal brand is as important as the organization you work for and the brand you carry, because I believe the success is always a combination of both, not one or other. That's my take on it.
No, I think you have summarized it really well, and that's right on the dot. I'll give you my 2 cents based on my experience. I think having worked with some large clients and have done some good work, I feel that clients kind of forget you if you're not visible out there, and this is how it is, right? So if you are being active on some social media and you're putting up your personal branding out there, you are bit visible in front of your client, right? It's not about being on their face all the time, but being visible or being remembered by them, and that kind of opens more opportunities as you go ahead. Sometimes we don't even realize how our personal branding or how our engagement kind of fosters relationship. I was actually surprised when my wife was talking to somebody in different consulting field, and when she mentioned about me and the company I work in, he actually remembered me. Oh, I have read his few posts.
Again, Harsh, the best thing which I have heard personally, it's from my elder brother, why branding is important. It kind of summarizes, right? Education is for free, you pay for the certificate. That kind of summarizes and nails down that why brand and branding is important, because as I mentioned, brand automatically gives a certain degree of trust for consumers. And if you're talking about people brand, I think it gives that kind of a trust to your customers or leaders within the organizations or so on and so forth, that there are no two ways about it. Personal brand always exists, people understand about it, but it is important to ensure the reach is there. And hence it's important. I wouldn't call it as a self-promotion, but it's a necessary step to make sure what you're known for, to be known for people.
Now we've talked about the personal brand. I think one thing I want to cover here is that building a personal brand while being in a professional world, it's tricky, but obviously it's essential. So, what are some actionable tips or practical tips that one should follow to build a personal brand? And also, is there a way people can continue to feel authentic without having a feeling that they are doing a lot of self promotion?
Again, great question. I don't think I have mastered the skill of doing a personal branding really well. I think you should go back and talk to some of the leaders in my previous organization. My personal brand would come as very strong delivery partner, safe pair of hands. Those are all narratives, right? I mean, but what I've learned from that is I do have. It was very important that I have not done enough to make sure my branding is visible within the organization or in the marketplace. I've taken that in my stride, and what I do regularly is consistency is key. I think it's very, very important to put your thoughts out there in whatever medium, whether it is through a podcast or it is through if it's a professional networking thing, it's through a LinkedIn, or to be able to go and speak in certain forums like Jitex and so on and so forth. You need to be there. But what I see is a lot of people go and do that, what they don't believe in also. They speak things which they don't believe in. It's very easy for people to cut through the fluff and see that this is not the true self. It's extremely important to be consistent and find various forums and mechanisms to be able to build your brand. And some of the things which I have started doing off late is I mentioned one of the things, professional forums. You go and speak in Jitex or some Cloud Day and so on and so forth. Consistently write on LinkedIn. One thing which I've started following, it's been about 3 or 4 months. Every weekend, I try to write on a Saturday and Sunday, whatever is very close to my heart and I believe, and I write about it. And whenever I think, I have not thought about additional content to be written, I make sure I go and meet some really interesting people from different walks of life. And a lot of my conversation, I write and giving due credit to people. I just don't give the name because, they don't want to be named. I do that. And the third most important thing is, I'm, of course, we decided to start doing a podcast. I do believe that in a way that it will help in terms of people recalling, oh, there's something called real talk, where they explore different conversation. And one last thing is, I think, to have a lot of confidence. If you start, people start believing in themselves much more than believing in their bosses and others, sky is just the beginning. And all these things will add up to creating a big brand equity.
No, I know that you write regularly on LinkedIn, and in fact, you kind of inspire me also to kind of take it like on a consistent basis. Now you're talking about confidence. I think I just also want to add you a few points here. Now, a lot of us, and specifically when in initial years of consulting, you feel a bit scared to go out and put yourself out there. I think this is what my coach told me. If you are a bit scared to start, what you can do is you can start small. And when I say start small, maybe there is a news article related to your field. You can actually put that out on LinkedIn. Maybe write a 2 lines or 2 cents about what you think. Yeah, and let's say even if you feel that's difficult, something which is closer to your heart, which is sports. Maybe if your team, one of the team which you follow or you cheer on, has won some competition, you can actually go and write a 2 liner on that as well. So that could be a starting point as well.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. The most important thing is stop worrying about the world. I mean, things which has really changed for me in the past 3-4 months is I really don't worry too much about the world. If I firmly believe on something, I will get my point of view out there. One. And even if you believe that, people tend to get, I would use the word inspire for lack of better word, copying, whatever it is, right? I can tell you one thing. I've seen, for example, there are some of my friends and former colleagues have given me a call saying that, Nagraj, you started writing. There is one more individual also started writing in your firm, and you're writing about chess. They're also starting to write about chess. What's happening? I'll say, oh, it's good, right? I mean, if someone is getting inspired by me writing, they also want to write. It's great. Only thing is, I think people can also cut through if someone is just putting a point of view out there, not necessarily what they believe in. I'll give you a quick example, right? I'm not going to take names, but I'm sure a lot of you will be able to guess. There was an article, by someone. I'm not even going to give specifics on the gender because it's easy for people to guess it. Let them keep guessing it. some kind of with family, a game of chess is kind of being played, and the photograph of that particular thing was out there on LinkedIn, with some principles around leadership or thinking and strategy and so on and so forth. But the fundamental flaw in that is, again, not everyone will be able to look into it, because I've been trained by the best. I've had the opportunity to go through the detail. Look, in nowhere in the world, when you have a chess board and when you're playing a game, if your pawns have not been moved, your bishop cannot jump over the pawn. Only knights can jump. So it was unfortunate for that individual that even though that was put out there and it was not perceived well, because that means it is not genuine, because rules are also not followed. So I would say, stop worrying about the world, do what you want to do, and if others want to follow, let them follow. It's good for you. And I can tell you one thing, I don't believe that people who have got the best of talent will always be successful. I think consistency is key. Somewhere, when you become very consistent and you stop worrying about the world, what they think, what they perceive about you, you have got the courage to do. Just go ahead and do it. They can't keep up with it, because it's coming out of the consistency, will come out of passion. Okay, and courage will keep you going, not worrying about the world. I don't think if anyone who is not genuinely passionate about something will not be able to consistently keep up with you. Go for it. Go for gold.
No, I totally agree with you. There's a saying in India that सबसे बड़ा रोग क्या कहेंगे लोग. So it means is the biggest disease is that you are thinking what people will think about you.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the biggest barrier to overcome. I think talking about the barrier, I also want to talk about a barrier which is very personal to me, which kind of stopped me to doing taking some more initiatives, or going out of your comfort zone, and that is perfectionism. I think I've talked to you previously about it, and actually you are the one who motivated me to start this podcast series without stressing too much on the perfectionism. I want to understand, because you have managed a lot of team members, you have seen a growth of a lot of team members, why do people have this issue of perfectionism? Have you ever faced it in your career, and how one can overcome that?
I have always been perceived by people and leader around me as someone who is not very confident about myself. Okay, even though they believe that I can pretty much crack any complex problem. So if I look back, why that kind of a perception was formed, I think I wouldn't say it is because I was looking for perfectionism. I think somewhere I would say it will be to do with the fear of failure, and then what others will think about you. What if it's not the best? Unfortunately, it's taken a lot of years for me to realize there's nothing called best. I mean, who sets the yardstick of what is best? And that is even in my reports, whenever I used to consult for clients, I have never used the term best practice. I have used the term leading practice, because everything changes over time, right? So, for going by whatever I explained to you, what I have also seen in people who have worked with me is, I have always said that no one gets shot for being 80% accurate. Just go for it. Keep improving. People who have got a lot to say, who could critique, who might tell, for example, lighting was not great, Harsh was not looking very professional, I think he's a bit of overdressed for the podcast and all those stuff, right? They don't even have the courage to start a podcast.
True, very true.
So why are you worried about it? So I don't think it's perfectionism. I mean, if you have that, I would personally, from my perspective, I would think, again, it's about external validation. And second is the fear of failure is what probably stops people, and that's what becomes like a barrier. And how I have been able to encourage my team is, I have been the most vulnerable, and I've always told, look, now you're looking at me, once I made partner, or once I made director, or once I made senior manager, I have gone through the same thing. I've had the same insecurities. Do I have the kind of insecurity even after getting to leadership role? Of course. And anyone who says they don't have insecurity, they are lying. I can tell you that is to manage their image. Everyone has insecurity. I know, as a matter of fact, leaders, after delivering a presentation, they have personally asked, was it okay? So everyone requires validation, everyone has their own insecurities, everyone wants to be perceived in the best light. If you want to be a good leader, if you want to encourage your team to go for it and not worry too much about perfectionism or fear of failure on what the world perceives, tell them your own challenges and insecurity and encourage them. I've gone through the same kind of a journey, and they'll get better. We'll all turn out to be okay. That's what I've realized.
No, this is a view when you gave me, which kind of gave me a lot of confidence to, not have that fear of failing out and being, perceived as negative. In fact, you told me that you should be proud of yourself that you're going and putting yourself out there. I think another interesting discussion we had previously where you have mentioned the dangers of seeking validation. Why do you feel that running behind the validation is a trap for people with low self-esteem? And do you think the need for validation is the reason people tie themselves with their jobs and the titles? And when they lose their jobs, they kind of lose the motivation and self-esteem.
Yeah, see, again, if this question was asked to me about 10, 15 years back, I don't think even I'll be able to relate to the question, because I think it's natural for people to seek validation, especially when they're young. Because let's understand the fundamental to this. If you look at corporate setup, is corporate setup is wired in a way that people have to seek validation, and they have to run behind validation, either in terms of getting the best rating as a best employee, or the best bonus, or fastest promotion, youngest partner, youngest director, or whatever it is. That's how the corporate setup has been done. Now, taking a step back, again, I don't want to generalize, but normally what I've seen in sort of Asian culture, and especially within Indian, and if I have to go further down, let's say South Indian culture, I'll speak about South Indians, is from the word go, when the kid is born, for every little achievement, right, whether first step taken, or first dance move, or first medal, right, there is always an external applaud. So it is quite natural from being a baby, growing up, toddler, boy, teenager, and to get to corporate. So far, they've always experienced getting an external applause, which is a form of validation, right? So it's very difficult once you're grown adult to stop, expecting validation. So it's a journey. And why I think it's a form of low self-esteem is, I think if for every achievement and milestone, if we start expecting external applause and validation, that becomes a biggest trap, especially in a corporate as well as personal setup. Someone can deny giving you that validation. So the moment they deny giving you that validation, you are in constant search of getting that validation, and it's a battle. I mean, in my view, it's not worth it. It's easy for me to tell now, I'm 43, but if you ask a 23 or 25-year-old, it's not easy, right? Everyone has to go through the journey, and it is a trap. A simple example, I'm not going to take name. Someone has worked pretty hard in my previous organization, and for some reason that particular individual has not been promoted, and obviously he or she was not happy and talking to me as someone who's leaving the organization, saying, despite all these things, I was not promoted. And as I asked, okay, fine, you're not promoted. Okay, so what is it impacting you? What is it affecting you? Why is it affecting you? The affecting part is only because, I think I'm better than some of the others who've got promoted, and this has been denied to me. What it means is that external applause or acknowledgement has not come, wherein they believe someone else is better. So I think I'm not better. That is where I talk about how that is directly related to self-esteem. So that's why it's important to make sure that, keeping your self-esteem should be independent of what the world thinks and the validation whether you get or not. I have personally seen sometimes in corporate setup, people do not give the validation just to make someone work even harder. So I don't think, right? But it takes time. Everyone has to go through their own journey. And it is important to have, again, going back to what I said, it's important to have a mentor who clearly explains where to seek validation, where not to seek. And if I have to connect back to one quick trivia, right? I came across, some content there. I believe when people associate a lot of their self esteem to the work, the profession, the title, the bank balance, and the cars they drive, and the number of properties they have, wealth accumulator, and on top of this ladder is, I am so and so in so and so industry, I am whatever CXO. Everyone, will come to a day where they have to retire. They are not going to be having those fancy titles, right? Suddenly it takes a U-turn in their confidence and self-worth, and the health deteriorates.
Correct.
So it's extremely important to have hobbies beyond all these things. To Harsh, as an example, your self-worth is independent of what you have studied, where you work, and what brings money to the table, keep your house running. It's simple now for me. So this is how, I would say that, don't worry too much about validation, but you need to go through the journey.
Yeah. No, in fact, when we had this conversation a few weeks back, and it was very close to my heart because I have went through an experience where I had a very short stint in an investment bank, and it was more like a dream job for me, and things didn't work out. And right after that patch, I literally lost all my motivation and self esteem. And after rebuilding things, I realized that, if God forbid, if this kind of situation again arises and maybe I'm not able to go back to for my role, I need to build certain skills beyond my work, which I can leverage later to build something meaningful rather than getting into that hole of losing all motivation and self esteem, which is tied to my job. I should be ready with a mindset. And that mindset, as you said, comes from having certain skill sets, having certain hobbies, and very important, not giving too much importance to yourself, right? If you have that a mindset, I think if this kind of situation arises, you can definitely, recover it very fast.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you. I mean, just, it came to my mind while you were speaking. A lot of times I've come across profiles on LinkedIn. For example, they're working for an organization and then they also add X, this. For me, it's shocking. Are you not proud of the current organization you're working for? Do you really want to still live with the legacy of where you work for? I don't know, right? I can never relate to it. Because the way I look at it is, you work for an organization, you take pride in working for the organization, and that is how it gets translated into giving the conviction in the marketplace to be able to win, right? I've come across so many LinkedIn profiles where, I'm X, this, X, this, X, this, X, and by the way, I'm also working here. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Again, I'm not judging anyone, but I am not able to relate to that kind of a concept because that also I feel is some form of a hungover validation of working for a certain place.